After playing the closed beta from start to finish and watching the developer interviews and live streams, oh boy there was a lot, I have some strong thought about this game. To sum it up, it's a really good survival and probably a pretty bad MMO. First, let's talk about what Dune Awakening gets right, the survival mechanics. This is where the game shines at its brightest. The harsh desert environment feels alive and unforgiving. The need to manage water, adapt to sandstorms, and fend off sandworms adds like a visceral tension, especially in the first hours of the game. It's survival at its finest, and for fans of Dune, this interpretation of Arrakis feels authentic. Visually, the game is stunning. Every frame captures the mystery and grandeur of Frank Herbert's universe. From the way the sand shifts to the massive scale of the landscape, it's clear that the developers poured their passion into bringing this world to life. One of the standout features for me is the base building, which is both intuitive and deeply satisfying. The developers clearly built on their past experience, refining mechanics to make it one of the strongest aspects of gameplay. I spent hours building bases, redesigning my base. The tools are well designed, the customization options are engaging, and it's evident that the developers are the best at what they do when it comes to base building systems. Now let's talk about where the cracks start to show up. I'm thinking about the botanical testing stations and the crashed ships, which are the dungeon of Dune Awakening. This location should be the heart of progression. It offers unique schematics and rare resources for advanced items, crafting like vehicles, special armors, or weapons. However, in practice, they feel like one of the game's weakest points. The fact that they are not instanced is a huge issue. Too often, I find myself entering only minutes after another player, and instead of having intense fights in that base, I just loot chests and walk past the remains of what should have been my enemies. This severely dampens the challenge and the immersion. Additionally, while I appreciate the lore-rich audio log scattered throughout the facility, forcing me to stand still next to a radio and listen to an NPC monologue for 5 minutes feels a bit outdated. Why can't I listen to the audio logs while I continue to explore the facility? This would have made the experience more seamless instead of like momentum killer when I just like stand and just wait while I hear enemies coming from the other room. Now about the main course, of course, the combat in Dune. The sandbox-style skill tree is a fantastic concept. It allows players to eventually pick and mix abilities from different classes to craft their own unique playstyle. And the spice mechanics, once you unlock it, is pretty good. It's really interesting. The shield mechanics also add an intriguing layer of strategy. It provides a kind of a balance between melee and ranged combat that makes the fight feel more dynamic and tactical. However, despite this strong foundation, the combat system can feel janky at times, especially in PvP. I mean, look at that.
Who's on top? I don't know who's who. There's no name. Am I hitting somebody? I don't know if that's teammate or not.
In those chaotic skirmishes, you start to see the limitation of the MMO framework. The devs have taken some strong decision, like you don't have a name above your head, so to identify your team from the enemy's team, you have to, for example, wear matching colors, so you know that, oh, that's an ally or that's an enemy, and they intentionally play on this so that like you can have players that knows there's gonna be an encounter and they take your like guild colors to confuse you in the fight. That sounds great, but in practice you just saw what it looks like. It's terrible. Now let's talk about what I experienced, which is the early game, maybe beginning of mid-game, I would say. I went up to level 50, I unlocked my spice powers, I crafted bases, and which I saw one YouTuber describe it as like a truly moment which is like getting kicked in the balls. The first base you build, later they ask you to destroy it. And of course, the first time you play, if you don't rush too much, you spend a lot of time getting into a comfortable zone where you don't have to fight for water, so you spend a lot of resources building your base, and then you thought like, oh, I know I can keep several bases, so I should be able to keep this base, and then you go to the next region of the Aga Basin, and they're like, oh no, you need to remove this base you had. Oh yeah, and that's really a kick in the ball moment, because they didn't tell you that ahead of time, otherwise you would not have spent that much time building your first base. Then you take your vehicle and then you transfer all the resources from the old base to the new base. You remove the old base and you didn't know that you could actually just go there and then just boop, reclaim it, which was truly terrible experience. Another thing I also want to discuss is the quests. Was not always clear, maybe because I was try to play quite fast to experience as much as possible, but what are like the MSQ, the main quest line, and like some additional, more local quests. So I think I did spend quite a lot of time on doing like stupid thing, like, oh, craft this weapon, kill 15 guys with this weapon, craft this armor, and now craft this other weapon, go again, kill 15 guys with that weapon. And you know what? Why don't you craft again a new weapon and go kill 15 guys with that weapon? And I thought that was the MSQ, but it was not. So it was not clear always what you actually need to do to progress. So I think that's something they have to improve a little bit. Or as the game comes out, people will know, and then you will just watch a tutorial online or some other people play or discover it with your friends. Why not? I think it's really good to play with a couple of friends. I think up to 4, 2 or 3, that's perfect size. You can combine your resources, you can level up faster, you can have a lot of fun. I think it's perfectly fine for solo players as well for the early game. Pretty much in the survival aspect of the game, wonderful experience. Now let's talk about the late game. That's what everyone is freaking out about, especially the devs. Over the last 2 weeks, they've been trying to reassure everyone, oh no, don't worry, there are gonna be some PvP and PvE, but you don't need to engage in PvP, PvE is fine. It's gonna be a nightmare, I tell you already. So in short, the late game is a bingo game. You have the Lensrad, which represents an assembly of the great houses in the Dune universe. You join one of the 2 houses that are available, Harkonnens or the Atreides, and your role is to sway the vote in your favor, so you can fill a line in this bingo chart and get server rules that will apply to you for a week. Those rules could be like access to specific weapon schematics, to have like reduced cost of building, whatever. In order to sway the vote of one of the great houses, you need to fill objectives. Could be providing them specific resources, could be holding a stronghold for them, could be crafting some vehicles for them. And that's where it will go wrong, because you have 2 factions on the server, and every MMO that has this system, you inevitably end up with one faction dominating. And it's simple, if you start losing, and then you keep on losing, and then you never win, why do you stay on this server? It's much easier to go on another server when your faction is winning all the time, or switch faction and then be winning all the time. Why would you go through this experience of constantly losing because you're overwhelmed? And it's not gonna be like, oh, 90-10 will make the difference. Even a 60-40 already make a difference and sway the balance completely on one side. So they have a plan, it's to introduce a 3rd faction, but it's not gonna be here on launch. So you know what's gonna happen, right? You're gonna have big guilds. A guild is 32 people, but you could have multiple iterations of the same guild all working together, and they're gonna completely sway the server one side. And it's gonna be fun for them over the first 2 months, because they're gonna have to assert dominance over the server, but then what's next? It's just like farming, farming and farming. If the content keeps coming, it's fine. No problem for them, but if you're like a single player, there is not much you can do. And that's where the 3rd faction comes into play. This 3rd faction that's not gonna be on launch is gonna have a role to kind of try to balance between the 2 factions, so to disrupt the activities of one, or maybe push another one towards success. And this 3rd faction only benefits if the 2 other faction comes neck to neck at the end of the week. Apparently that's where like solo players can shine. Now put yourself in the gaming chair of a player in a big guild. You played a lot, hardcore for the first like 2 months. You asserted dominance over your server. Now you control most of the resources. You win the Lensrad every week. You set, everything is fine. And then you have like a 3rd faction. A few percentage of the player remaining switch to that faction, and then they can completely diminish, if not annihilate, your efforts and make it much harder for you to even win. How frustrating is that? But then also put yourself in the gaming chair of one of those players that play for the 3rd faction. Imagine you see that there's this huge imbalance in your server and you try to restore it by disrupting or helping others. And then suddenly you realize that no matter what you do, your efforts don't change anything. That's also frustrating. I think it's a lose-lose situation. And let's keep on talking about those like PvE players that are like small guild or no guild, how they can have an influence. They were talking about this cartography system, that you have the deep desert, that you will be able to make a map of it and sell it, and I tell you right now, not gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen. When the servers go back up after the Coriolis storm and the deep desert is reset, big guilds, they're gonna scout the whole area, they're gonna make their own map, and if you're a player in one of those big guilds, you're gonna be on your lunch break. You're gonna open your phone, you're gonna have a pop-up on Discord, you're gonna watch, and they're gonna be already a complete map of the new deep desert. You're gonna have a list of objectives to do, farming time, today we farm spice, tomorrow we farm the Imperial testing station, blah blah blah, and all is gonna be made in a few hours. There's no way single players can have an impact on that. Big guilds are gonna manage everything on their own. Since I was talking about the deep desert, I think it's the moment to explain a bit more in details how it works. The deep desert see it as like a 3x3 grid. You enter from the south, bottom 3 squares, and you can move up. The more north you go, the more resources you have, the better stuff. That's where you want to go if you want to maximize your farming. Now, the deep desert has a maximum population of 300 players. It makes less than 1 player per square kilometer. That's make it quite a desert, actually. There are not gonna be that many players. The encounters are gonna be rare unless there is like a shock point for some specific resources up north. The way that they made this grid is that 300 players and 100 player max per one of the squares. The reason they do it like that is that you can still enter when people are up north, and people that are up north are not blocked, and they can actually exit the desert. I think that's pretty good, and I think that they reduce the population to what was announced before, and I think that's good. That will allow small group of players, let's say you play with your friends, to farm resources without having too much encounters with big guild, unless you want something really specific, or you want to bet on like, oh, can I get this big spice blow by myself or with my couple of friends? By yourself, probably not, to be honest. So indeed, a lot of players are concerned about the PvP aspect of the game, but I think it will be minimal, or it will be between big guilds or like small group of people, but it will be apparently easily to relocate, I mean to escape the fights. And then if you're just playing with a couple of friends, okay, there's some people there, or some people come to gank us and they just move somewhere else. It's so big. Unless someone is specifically targeting you, you should be fine. I think that will be okay, but I really have some doubts about the end game, to be honest. I don't think that's sustainable. I think it will be quickly out of balance, and that one side will sweep it all, and I think they will have huge struggles for years to try and fix it. In the end, Dune Awakening is shaping up to be an incredible survival game, but its MMO identity remains a point of uncertainty for me. I think the game is totally worth it. For the price you pay for the game, you can have hundreds of hours of survival experience, going all the way to the deep desert by yourself, or with a couple of friends, or with a guild. That's gonna be awesome. I really doubt it will be a great MMO, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be an awesome survival. So I'm looking forward to see you in the deep desert starting June 5th, baby.